All right, in this video we are going to look at a multiplayer chat system using the list view widget, which is much better than the scroll box system. But the list view is a little bit hard to get set up, so we're going to walk through it together. I'm starting from the third person basic setup. We're going to call this multiplayer chat. Great project. All right, first thing we're going to do is make sure our settings are set up for multiplayer. We're going to do 2. Now let me say that normally when you do multiplayer, you have menus where you can create or browse and join sessions, and you create sessions. I'm not going to go through all that, so it'll still work, but you'll see some warnings in the console. So let's see. Number of players 2. Let's try this. Listen server. Let's try that. Okay, let's just make sure that we can see each other moving. Client can see the server. And I'm going to move this window over to the other side. Okay, both windows can see the other moving. So those settings seem good for now. What we need are world settings here, game mode override. We want to, where's our blueprints? Third person game mode. We want to make sure we set that. Third person character, HUD, player controller. We're going to need our own player controller as well. So let's go player controller, my player controller. Okay. I don't really like how this project is organized. Yeah, okay, we'll stay in this folder here. So first thing we'll want to do is go into our game mode. Okay, player controller. Oh, first let's switch player controller to my player controller. Compile open full blueprint editor. We're going to make some changes here. We need to override on post login. This is what gets called when someone joins the game. I'm just opening up my notes on the other screen. So we get a new player who joins, it's player controller. What we want to do is we want to cast this to my player controller. The game mode is set to use this player controller. So let me drag this in here. When we set our game mode, it's set to use my player controller here in our game mode override. So this will be a safe cast. We want to do the game mode object, actor, blueprint. This exists only on the server. So there's not multiple of these game modes, just one of them. We're going to create a variable called connected players. This is going to be of type my player controller, and it's going to be an array. After we cast, we are going to take this. We are going to add the new player to our connected players. All right, let's just do a little print string to make sure this is working. Hello. So we're going to play. Server says hello. See, here's the session errors. Server says hello. And there should be another one somewhere around here. Oh, let's just do this. Hello. There we go. 2 hellos, 2 people joined, both reported by the same game mode on the server. Okay. Let's delete that. What we want to do is, every game, a multiplayer game, you're probably gonna, if you're using like a Steam subsystem, you can pull Steam names. But we're not going to do all that. So let's create another array on the server of strings. Let's add a couple elements. We're going to say player 1, player 2. All right, so these are names to give out. So when someone logs in, we'll assign them a name. Player name index. Make this integer, starts at 0. So after someone joins, we are going to give them a name, or more specifically, assign their player controller a name. So what we need is a variable and an event on the player controller. So let's jump to the player controller now. Event graph. Let's close those out for now. Let's make a custom event. Set player name. We want the server to be in charge of names. So this is going to run on the server version of the player controller. The player controller has a version in the server and a version locally on the client. But we want the server to be in charge of setting names, so this is going to be on the server. Let's create a variable, player name. It's a string. We are going to set it on the server, which means that this variable will be set on the server, empty on the client. If we were to set this as a replicated variable, it would eventually also exist on the client, but it takes time to propagate and we don't really need it locally in our demo. In reality, you'll probably want it in the player state and have it replicated. New name. String. So we get a new name, executes on the server version of the player controller. Let's go back to our game mode. Now with our player controller, we can set name, set player name, and it needs a new name, but I forgot something here. This player index needs to be just that. Compile. This needs to increment int. Oh no, not increment yet. The index of the newly added item. Okay, well, actually we may not need a thing. Let's get our names here. Let's do get a copy just to be safe. The integer of the newly added item we will use to fetch a player name. Okay, so the first time we add a player, index will be 0. We will grab player 1 and tell the player controller to set it as their name. The second time it'll be index 1, it'll get index 1, player 2. Compile. All right, so we're setting player name in the player controller here. So now our server player controller has a name. And so we can, mark who's typing, saying what. The next thing we'll have to do is, what should we do next? I think next we want to do, we've got the name. Let's make the actual chat box. So we're gonna go blueprints, user interface, widget, and we'll just call this HUD. Save it, open it up. Let me bring up my notes. Okay. So for our chat box, we are going to border. Bring it down here in the corner. Yeah, there's so many settings that you can play. I'm just going to haphazardly place it. We're going to set it to be black, and we're going to put it a little bit see-through. Okay, that's our border. Now we need to, we need basically an area that's going to show the log and an area to type. So what we need is a vertical box. We'll call this the chat container. And we want this thing, well, okay. You can mess around with anchors, they're kind of complicated, but you can use anchors to basically lock this to this corner, 25% of the screen this way, 10% of the screen this way, and whatever. We're not going to mess around with that. Okay, so we have our vertical box chat container. We need a list view. Virtualized list that allows thousands of items. That's better than a scroll box, 10 to 100. Definitely want list view. It's just a little harder to implement. I'll put a list view there. This is, we're going to rename it chat log. And then we're also going to need a text box. Text box, also in the chat container. So they're kind of squished up here. This is going to be chat entry. The chat log we want to fill, which will push the chat entry to the bottom, which is fine. That's where we want it. Let me confirm our settings. Entry chat box, chat entry. Okay, we're probably good for now. Now watch what happens when I try to compile. Chat log, our list view, has no entry widget class specified. Basically, it wants you to specify what widgets are going in this list. So let's make a new widget. We will call this the, what's a good name? The chat log entry widget. Before we do, we're not going to do a whole lot on this right now, except in the graph, we are going to implement an interface, user object list entry. Implementing that interface gives us these functions, which we will come back to later. But it also allows our list view to be able to detect that as an option. List entries, entry widget class. There it is, chat log entry widget. If you don't see anything show up here, it's because you have not implemented the interface in your entry widget. So we put that there, now it compiles. Now before we go further, let's make sure we test it. Now, you can put we have to add the HUD to the viewport. You can do it in character or controller. I like to do it in the player controller. So that's where I'm going to do it. So let's go to the player controller. Let's get begin play override. So here's begin play. Now what we want to make sure we do, well, let's make another custom event. Initialize HUD. Initialize HUD, we only want it to run on the local player, owning client. We don't want to initialize HUD on the server. And what'll happen if we just do this, create widget. If we just do create widget like this on begin play, create widget, this little symbol here, I'm trying to get it to show up, but it doesn't seem to want to. There's supposed to be a tooltip on this. Basically what this symbol means is that this node runs only on the client. So basically when the server player controller begins, it's going to hit this and create the widget on the client. When the client hits this, it's going to create the widget on the client. So we're going to have two stacked on top of each other and it just won't work. So we're not going to do that there. We're just going to call initialize HUD. So whether this comes through on the server, it will replicate to owning client and call this if server. If it's already, yeah, so let's check it out. So here we are going to create widget. The class is going to be our HUD. Owning player is self. Let's go ahead and promote to variable. Save this as our HUD reference. And last thing to do is add to Viewport. Don't need two of them. Add to Viewport. So now when our player controller begins, well, for our sanity, let's do this. Print string. Setting up HUD. Just so we can confirm that, yes, it only does run once for each player. So we're going to play. Here it is, our little box here. And wait, hold on. I wanted one in the viewport. There we go. So here's both players. They both have their little widget. Let's check the output log. Setting up HUD. Okay. So server, setting up HUD, client. Hold on a second. It seems like it's doing it twice. 1 minute. Okay, back. I'm not sure what was going on. Here's what we're going to do. You want to make sure your two players, selected viewport, play as listen server. When we hit play, we see the server set up their HUD and we see the client set up a HUD. Remember the viewport here, he's a client and a server. So that's him setting up his HUD and then client one setting up their HUD. Okay. Let's, where were we? We've got the list view, chat entry, player controller. Let's one more time just to be sure. Server setting up, client one setting up HUD. Let's go back to check the log. Client setting up HUD. And then somewhere up here should be server setting up HUD. it is. You notice it's the same player controller. That's because it's from the perspective of this person. So when you're in the server, you are the first player controller and everyone else is 1, 2, 3. When you're the client, you are the first player controller and everyone else is, well, you don't have other player controllers on the client unless you're doing like split screen. Okay, so I think we can move forward. The next thing we want to do is we've got our HUD. We need some functions. In the HUD, oh, let's see. Yeah, are we done with this thing here? Yeah, so let's get some buttons done. Let's do some, let's make sure this chat, these are both variable. Okay, let's go to the graph. Let's delete that stuff. Chat entry. Okay, so let's make a chat functions area. We are going to do chat entry on text committed. Click the little button on the left there. Sorry, there's chat entry. Over here to on text committed. Commit method, switch. Enter, that's what we want. Let's get the get owning player. On enter, we want to cast to my player controller. We're getting the owning player of this widget. I'm casting it to our player controller. And we will tell our controller to send a chat message. You probably want to send chats through the controller. If you have a character that can die or respawn or switch to other characters, you probably want to still be able to message during all those transitions. So we're going to have our controller be the one to send chats. So let's go back to the controller. We're going to make a custom event, send chat message. Send chat message. Now, you probably guessed we're going to need text to send. And this needs to run on the server. You notice we didn't make either of these reliable. This one you probably could. You definitely don't need to make a chat message be reliable. It gets to the client when it gets there. Gameplay events are not dependent on whether or not a chat is received in a timely manner. So we don't mark it as reliable. So let's go back to our HUD. Now that we are here, we can call that function, send chat message, replicated to server. So we are in a widget, so of course we're on the owning client. So this will tell the player controller on the server to send a chat message. Because I didn't need this reroute. Send the chat message. After we send the message, let's go ahead and set text of that text box to empty. Just clear the box. Text to send. And you might be wondering, well, wait a minute. How do we know who sent it? Let's go to our player controller. They get this message. Let's go ahead and verify that it is actually coming through on the server. So we're going to play. Let's just check our log again. Server set up their HUD. Remember, the server is also a client because it's a listen server. Server set up their HUD, client set up their HUD. Oh yeah. So now I'm going to type a message. Server message. Let's look at the output log. Okay. Player controller and the server set a message. Let's do the other one. Other message. Aha, player controller 1 in the server, other message. Player controller 0 in the server, other message. So we have confirmed that both messages are in the server. So now we need to update the log, but we need to update everyone's log so that the client can see what he says, and all messages that arrive in the server need to also arrive at the client. So the server's got to forward them. And that's what we'll do next here. So in the player controller, send chat message. We're going to delete our string here. We're going to get our game mode. Remember, game mode only exists in the server, but we're on the server. This is the player controller version running in the server. Going to get the game mode, cast it to third-person game mode, because we need to extract a certain component. We need the connected players. Because what we're going to do is we're going to loop through the connected players and make sure we send this message to everyone's logs. And for that, we can do a for loop. We are looping through all the player controllers, all the connected player controllers. All right. Now, what we want to do, on each one, we're going to tell the client to, we're going to tell each of the connected players to update their logs. So let's make another custom event here called update chat log. This is going to run on the owning client. And it's going to have both a player name and a message. So now for each player controller that we're looping through, update chat log. Body there, message there. Player name, where's it coming from? This variable. And we know it's going to be populated because we are on the server right now in this path. And we set this on the server. So the server knows which player name to assign to which message. Well, really, it's all the player controllers have a server version. And so when you tell the server version to send a message to everyone, it's just going to append its own name in front of that message. Update the chat log, player name, message. Okay, so now we're back. This will call, if we have two connected players, this gets called twice on both of the owning clients. So now we have this chat log, and we can call a function on the HUD or an event to update the list view. But before we're ready to update the list view, we have to prep it. So let's prep it. Okay, so back in our HUD, let's expand our chat functions area. Let's make a custom, custom event called update chat log. Okay, this is also going to run on owning client because we're updating a user interface. Well, we're not quite ready for that yet either. Now it's time to go back to our chat log entry widget. The way list views work is this function on list item object set will get called when a new list item is created. So let's go ahead and implement that event. And you can see it's an object. Adding something to a list view, you have to add a object. The object contains all the data that you want represented in that list view entry. So what we'll be doing is extracting some data from this object and using it to fill the entry widget, which then goes into the list view. There's other functions too. You can play around with each of them too, but we only need this one. So we need an object to hold our data. So we're going to go back here. Let's actually put them all into their own folder. Chat. We're going to put the entry widget in there. We need a few more things to run a list view. We need a very, very basic object. And we're going to call it the chat log object. Okay, this is the object that will hold our data. So now we need the data. Struct. Chat log entry struct. Our chat log entry struct is basically going to have a sender and a message. You can add other things like profile picture or various other things. Let's put some defaults in here. That's our chat struct. That's our data. Let's open our object, chat data. We're going to create a variable called chat data in our chat log object. Chat log entry struct here. And then we're done with that. And that's literally all you do. It's just, you need an object that holds data to do this thing. So now we can go back to here, to the player controller. Our HUD we can call update chat log. Hold on, we're not quite ready for that. Update chat log in the HUD needs an input. And it's going to be new chat of type chat log entry struct pile. Okay, so now when our controller is updating here, there we go, new chat. We're going to make our data struct, draw those straight across, draw that straight across, organize it a little bit. Yes, good enough. that's it. So diving into the HUD, well, going back, we already confirmed that we were receiving messages on the client side, I believe. So the controller received the data. Now they're going to send it to the HUD. It's really just moving data from place to place is all it is. All right, so we need to create an object now to add to our list view. Create object, construct object from class. We are creating a chat log object. Owner of the constructed object, self, the HUD will own it. With that object, we are going to set chat data. And you guessed it, comes from here. And then we need to take this item and get our list view. Add item. Item we're going to add is our newly created object. And now for list views, what we want to do is go ahead and on the chat log, we are going to scroll item into view. We want to stay scrolled to the most recent chat. Now, if you're like scrolling up and reading old chats and a new one comes in, you probably don't want it to constantly jump you down to the bottom. And so there's a lot of other actions you can implement for a list view. And you can detect if it's scrolling or not, and you can add a lot of logic to it, but this is going to be sufficient for now. So there's our item and our list view, scrolling it into view. Now when this add item is called, it's going to be calling this. So now we need to handle what our widget's going to look like. So let's design it. We don't need a canvas panel. We can do a border if you want to put some padding in between the list view and the chat itself. We'll make it also same color and see-through. And then we want to add text. Our text we want to fill. We want it to wrap. Hit compile. Desired. There we go. And border. It should fill its parent and stretch out. We'll see. Okay, so now we get that item. It's just a generic object, so we have to cast to the chat log object. We are going to promote it to a variable because when this widget scrolls in and out of view, the list view virtualization does stuff with it. So it's probably good to if you want to add additional logic to have a reference to it from when it was set. From there, we are going to get chat data. And this doesn't have to be just strings. Again, you can add pictures, images, icons, actors. You can even add actor references to world things. And so you can interact with world objects from a list view. I think there's some examples out there of doing it with using an inventory. So with the chat log, we're going to break it. We've got our sender and our message. Let's call a format text. And what we're going to do is I'm going to do a brace timestamp. Dash sender close bracket colon message. We do that and we get our pins here. We're going to put sender there, message there. Time nodes are pretty easy. We want now, local date time of the computer as time. We don't want everything. Let's just get the time. Compile. Then what do we do with that? We take this text block. Just call it chat log entry. It's variable chat log entry set text. Right, like that. And then the execution line like that. I think let's go ahead and give this a test. Let's fire this up. If I type hello, you see player one hello appears on both the server and the client. I'm pretty sure the left one is oh yeah, server, client. Let's say the client replies with, oh, hi. Player two says, oh, hi. Player two says, oh, hi. Fonts are not ideal, obviously. So we can, this font here, let's say we want it to be something smaller, 14. Okay, that means we probably, so the text in the log is 14. We probably also want this chat entry box to also be 14. Compile. Now if we play here, more readable, and it's the same size. Let's test the wrapping of text with a long message. Yep, so it just stuck it onto its own line. Oh, actually maybe we didn't wrap it. Let's go back to the entry widget, this text block. Let's scroll, oh, we did wrap, okay. This is a long, so I didn't have enough spaces in there, I think. There we go. So you see it wrapped into 2 lines, went over to the client as well. You can see we can see both of each other running around. If I switch to this guy. So it would appear that we have a fully functional multiplayer chat system. I want to show you some ways you can use this in the future in another project. I'm going to bring up one of my own projects. Okay. And we're going to row 2. You notice my net mode in both of these windows says standalone. That's because I'm actually having one of them create the session and be a listen server. So I'm zooming around here with, these are the Wraith player characters that you can get for free from Epic. Now what I've done in mine is I have mouse is bound to here. I can detach it with a keystroke. I can toggle between an event log and a chat. So my event log, you're seeing that different players are receiving, so Bro 1 receives 350 max health from Bro 1's Wraith attribute initialization. This log is, oh, actually I'm not getting the name of Bro 2. Bro 2 has 175 health, Bro 1 is 350. So I gotta go back and do some bug fixing. These events are coming out of the gameplay ability system plugin from C++ into Blueprint. So I still gotta tweak that a lot. But we can do neat things like, let me shoot that. You see, from Bro 1's to do, Bro 1 receives 3 energy from Bro 1's energy regeneration. Very basic event logging. And chat I implemented the same way as I just showed you. And then so to do this widget here, actually it looks like I might be doubling up widgets here as well. I'll have to double check that. Oh no, it's just the border of the entry and the border of the box are doubling up and making it darker. Each of these buttons triggers a widget switcher, and the widget switcher just toggles between showing one list view versus the other list view. But all list views are, you do the same way. That's it. I hope you liked the video and can do some cool multiplayer chat.